Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, June the 6th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And once again, we're happy that you joined us. We're happy that you are our listeners and that there are so many great listeners out there. We know that from the different contacts we've gotten, but we've got the best audience. That's just all there is to it. We have the best audience of any program anywhere in the world. That's my opinion, Cindie. I mean, you can try to talk me out of it, but that's what I think.
Oh, no. I was thinking about this morning, about the idea of, because I was actually thinking about our listeners and the idea of imagining the experiences, and some of them I don't have to imagine because we've gotten emails and heard from listeners about how the program affects them and about things that have happened in their life as a result of listening or just as a result of them practicing law of attraction. And so what got me to thinking is imagining more and more of those emails pouring in and callers calling in and hearing all of the amazing results that the audience is getting. And I realized that when I put that out, that it's not only that I'm imagining, wow, that would be so great to hear, but for us to hear that, it has to happen, meaning that I'm holding the audience in a space of them getting great results in their manifesting practice. And I thought, well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good idea because obviously we're leveraging LOA when we do that. So, yeah, I mean, well, I guess neither one of us have a whole lot of trouble holding our audience in a very high vibrational place because I think they're already there. It's not like we have to put them there. They're already there. And we're just saying, yeah, hooray for being there. That's great.
That's a really good point. It's not hard to imagine at all.
No, it's very easy.
It's easy. And I think that's why, because you're right. The vibration's already there. It's very easy to get into alignment with our audience being successful. So that's a fun place to be.
It is. It's really fun.
So let us know,
And also, we're adding one of the big benefits of having put the book out, Your Daily Dose of Happy, Real Success Stories of the Law of Attraction, is we've gotten it into the hands of hundreds of people who, in many cases, haven't heard of us before and haven't heard the podcast before. So we're getting more people showing up to listen every single day. And
very good.
I'm going to have more opportunity with that next Tuesday, I think it is. Anne-Marie is one of our contributors to the book, and she's the one who has the Buttonwood Theater in Middletown, Connecticut. Actually, it's not called the theater. It's got a longer, like Arts and Cultural Center or something like that. But she's going to have me down there, and we're going to talk about the book to people who come in that night to the Buttonwood. And we'll do a book signing and stuff like that. So we're going to have even more opportunities to add listeners. And it's just,
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Book
it's going to be fun.
Yay.
A book signing. How about that? Something I hadn't really thought about. But yeah, I guess when you put a book out, you have to sign books sometimes.
Yes, that's what it's like when you're a famous author.
A famous author. That's right. Yes.
Wonderful. So, and you said that Anne-Marie was also a contributor.
Yeah, Anne-Marie and her husband Mike, both of them are contributors, and they'll both be there, obviously. So, yeah, we're gonna be full of authors all in one place.
That's very cool. And so, people that are coming and buying the book will be able to get it signed by several people.
By all three of us, yeah. In fact, I'm not sure if Louise will be able to be there or not, but if she's there, that would be four. So, a lot of good signings there.
Fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun.
That's really great.
So how's your 24 hours been? Anything interesting or exciting or fascinating happen?
Interesting, exciting, or fascinating? Probably all three. And I probably can't think of what they are. I feel like I have a continual stream of interesting and fascinating things and exciting things going on. I'm just really happy today that it looks like the weather is beautiful. Yesterday we had a thunderstorm, which I love if I can be inside, and I was, so it was great. I love a good thunderstorm, as long as I don't have to go out in it. And so today it looks like great weather, although we've been having this weather where the weather app will say it's the heat index that's so intense. 'Cause the weather app the other day said 91, and we kept saying, "Whoa, sure feels hotter than 91." Well, feels like 104.
Oh, wow.
And that is just really hard to stay out in very long, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But this rain that came through cooled everything down. The high was 82. So I'm looking forward to maybe the coolness will hang around for the day, but the sun will still be here. I don't know. I'm gonna get really good at manipulating weather patterns with my brain, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just realizing. I was realizing too. Some of our listeners are international, and they use the Celsius scale, and they're thinking, yeah, 100 degrees Celsius, you're cooking at that point.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what 100 degrees is Fahrenheit in Celsius. So
it's really high. I mean, we're talking high enough to roast your roast. It's pretty warm.
Oh no, I'm not saying. I'm saying I'm not sure what it would be if I translated it to Celsius. What it would actually be at 91 or 104.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I can give you a quick calculation. It would be about 212 degrees, so about boiling temperature of water.
No, I'm saying I'm saying if we use Celsius here instead of Fahrenheit.
I see.
How I would express it. I was pretty sure I knew it wasn't 200 degrees. It felt like it. It felt like it. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I know. I really hear that in the winter when I have some of my clients that are in like Canada and will tell me that it's 40 degrees below where they are. It's like, wait, I need to remember that it's Celsius and not Fahrenheit, but It's still below zero. So
it's still below zero, right?
Yeah, cold enough.
That's one of the funny things about the Celsius and the Fahrenheit scales, because they actually converge at, I don't remember exactly where it is, something like minus 40. They both come in around, they're both around minus 40 on their different scales. So you look at both of them, and either way you look at it, it's like real darn cold.
Right? Oh, but yet I have people tell me all the time, oh, I don't know how you live there. I don't know how you deal with that heat. And I can deal with the heat much better than I deal with the cold. And how do we deal with it? We just focus on something else, which is going to be the topic of our discussion today, right?
And by the way, I looked it up because I didn't feel like doing the calculation. So 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it's about 37.75 degrees Celsius. So there's your conversion.
There it is. When I hear 37, I think it's freezing. So
yeah, right. Oh my goodness. Well, that's great.
I think that's a great example of communication and perception, right?
It is, yes. All because of different scales, different ways of measuring temperature.
Right.
That's
different measurements. And we talked about that yesterday, about assigning a measurement to a specific pain level. And then it gives us a place to measure so we know that we're getting relief.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because we're in the book Money and the Law of Attraction, Esther and Jerry Hicks. The subtitle, though, of this book is Learning to Attract Wealth, Health, and Happiness. And we covered the first part and the second part, which was tools, and then how to use those tools to better our financial situation. We're in the third part now. So we've been talking about well-being and health. And it can be tricky to overcome pain and physical suffering in the body because we live in this body.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about some strategies for how to manage pain, how to change our focus on pain and so forth. But we kind of quickly acknowledged the fact that chronic pain can be even more challenging because it's hard to redirect your attention when you're constantly feeling that chronic pain. And sure enough, the next section we're focusing on is all about the chronic pain, so it's a timely topic. The subsection is entitled, How Could Someone Feeling Pain Focus Elsewhere? And we're going to do a Jerry Abraham thing again?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jerry says, okay, so I've heard you say that in order to heal ourselves, we want to get our thoughts off of the problem and onto what we're wanting. But if we're in pain, how can we not feel it? How can we get our attention off the pain long enough to concentrate on something we do want?
And Abraham says, you're right. It's very difficult not to think about the throbbing toe. Most of you do not think clearly about what you do want until you're living what you do not want. Most of you sort of drift into your day, blundering here and there, not offering any real conscious thought, because you do not understand the power of your thought. You usually do not offer any real deliberate thought until you're faced with something that you do not want. And
can I interrupt for a second there?
Mm-hmm.
The previous sentence, that one just caught my attention. Most of you sort of drift into your day, blundering here and there, not offering any real conscious thought. That's an interesting phrasing, because what they really mean is deliberate thought. So they're saying if your thought isn't deliberate, if you aren't actually doing it with intention, you're not actually conscious.
That's
an interesting thing.
I was happy to read that only because I recognized that's not me most of the time. I don't sort of drift into the day blundering here and there. Not that I never have, but it's not my usual practice because I've gotten myself into a habit of having very deliberate thoughts before I even get out of the bed. And so I guess if I'm blundering here and there and drifting, it doesn't happen for a while after I've been up.
Yeah, sure.
But generally, I mean, I can totally see that being the case. And I know I've experienced it, but I've gotten into a very strong practice of being deliberate about my intentions before my feet even hit the floor in the morning.
Yeah, that's good.
And well, as I was reading that, not offering any real, it struck me too in a different way than it struck you. I like what you had to say about it, though. It's like, wow, so we're not even really conscious if we're not deliberately. But I think that it's work, and it takes practice and effort to train our focus and to really take control of our thoughts, to be in control of our thoughts. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen upon us. It's something we have to be conscious and deliberate about. And because it takes effort and practice, I think a lot of times it just doesn't get done.
It does take effort. It does take practice. And it's one of those things that when you first try to do it deliberately, it does seem hard. And then after you've been doing it for a while, it seems easy. You know what I mean? I mean, I remember the first time I tried to deliberately focus my thoughts. I don't remember exactly what it was I was thinking about, what it was I was trying to accomplish. I'm sure I was trying to manifest something. But what caught my attention is I would try and I would give up, and then I'd check the time, and it was about 3 seconds.
Right. Well, I think we were talking about this. I think we might have been off air yesterday, but talking about anytime we open our awareness to something, like we're trying to change a bad habit or something, and we open our awareness, it seems like we're doing it all the time. And it seems like the other thing that happens is we catch ourselves after the fact.
Yes.
Like trying to do a 30-day, I'm not going to complain.
Right. Yeah.
That's a difficult one. Or, anything that we open our awareness to, suddenly we're recognizing, it's like every time I turn around, I'm doing this thing. It seems like it's constant. And then pretty soon we recognize, I'm catching myself before I do the thing or in the middle of it. I like sometimes not even complaining, but I like to support people when they are to change their language a little bit and to stop saying certain things.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is like to say something makes them feel a certain way.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? Like to say that makes me angry or that makes me sad, and instead to just start saying I feel sad about that or I feel angry when this happens as a point of power and empowerment. Mm-hmm. It's like things can't make us feel a certain way. We choose to feel that way. And when we change that little tweak in our language, but people say it all the time. I'm guilty of it as well. I'm raising my hand over here. I might say, that makes me feel a certain way. And I'll catch myself and change it. Yeah. And when we embark on an exercise like that, sometimes, oh my goodness, it just seems like it's so constant. But then we start catching ourselves in the middle. We say, no, it doesn't make me feel angry, but I feel angry. I feel angry when I see that. And then pretty soon we catch ourselves before it ever comes out of our mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? Pretty soon we realize that when we feel sad, we're saying, oh, I feel sad about that. Oh, I feel happy about that. Or we've changed the habit.
Right. That's true.
And then someone would say, was it hard to say, instead of saying that makes you feel happy, just to say you feel happy? Well, no, it's not hard. I don't even think about it now. It's just what I do.
Right.
It's a habit now. But that's like all of this thought focusing, all of it. At first, we're breaking habits of thought. And that feels like a struggle sometimes because those habits of thought are so ingrained in us. And some of them are lazy habits, right?
Right.
Like we drift into the day and What does it say? Fumble around.
Blundering here and there. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Blundering here and there. Those are kind of lazy habits of thought. La 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 la. I'm good at daydreaming, so that could be thrown in there too as a lazy habit of thought. But I've learned to leverage that, right?
The other thing I've noticed about this stuff is how perspective plays a role, because I described a few minutes ago how when I first tried to do deliberate thought, I was blown away that I could only sustain it for 3 seconds, and now I could do a whole lot more because I've been, like you say, I've been practicing. It's become more habitual. But the other thing that goes along with that is the perspective of how much progress I've made versus how much more I need to improve, and how I feel about that. That perspective is also up to me. And I guess the best way I can express that at this point in my life is I've been doing my little 30-day thing here in June where I am reminding myself, I'm trying to notice every time I get onto some sort of a negative track, a negative thought comes through my mind, or, which, turning it around the way you said it, I think a negative thought. Anytime that something like that goes on and I catch it, I immediately put out, either verbally or in my mind, I need a better feeling thought. And the point that I'm getting to is the first few days that I did that, I was doing that like 1.5, 2 dozen times a day. Mm-hmm. And one perspective of that is, well, that's a lot. And the other perspective is, wow, it was only 2 dozen.
I was like, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
we have 60,000 thoughts a day. So if you only corrected 24 of them, I think you're already a pro at this.
I mean, I'm not sure if that means that I missed 59,000 or if it means that we're only 24 misses. I don't know which it is.
Well, that's perspective too.
It is perspective. Yes, that's right. But
all right, so
but it is one of those things that shift. It's one of those things that does shift over time because, like you said, as you develop the habit and the habit becomes ingrained, it does become easier. You don't even have to think about it so much anymore. And that I think is really the big indicator that we're making progress. When we see the habit take shape and basically fit itself into our thought process, into our regular way of being, we know we've made progress. We don't have to measure it any other way. That's the best measurement we've got.
Yeah, we want it to become automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because when I look at we're on page 117 in the paperback, and which is on the right side of the book. But if I just glance over, I see where we talked about being devoured by a lion, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
It's because it was like we need to be learning these habits in the course of normal everyday things. We don't learn these habits in the course of being eaten by a lion.
This is true.
And so that's what's important, is that we take the time to focus now, to learn these habits of thought now, to drop the lazy habits of thought that cause us to just drift around and blunder here and there. And that way, if we ever do run up against a lion, we'll already have the thought processes in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. Yeah, that's a good
thing.
So
it says, because you do not understand the power of your thought, you usually do not offer any really deliberate thought until you're faced with something you do not want. And then once you're faced with something you do not want, then you attack it fully. Then you give it your attention, which, knowing the law of attraction as we do, only makes things worse.
It almost needs an explanation point right there. only makes things worse.
Right. It has an ellipsis. It definitely, I think, needs an exclamation point.
I think so, yeah.
And so our encouragement would be look for times or segments when you're not feeling such intensity of throbbing pain, and then focus on the well-being. That's also not so easy to do.
It's not, but there's a good point in there, which is even for someone who's experiencing chronic pain, it usually isn't constant. It usually ebbs and flows. More pain, less pain, more pain, less pain. So
right.
The way I see applying this in that situation is look for the time periods when you're feeling less pain and take advantage of them.
So really it's learning how to appreciate when we're feeling better.
Right.
Right. And so because pain often gets our attention and the lack of pain often feels like relief.
Right.
The painful attention getting is a little more shocking, I think, sometimes than just feeling relief. But it's that training ourselves to be aware of when we're experiencing a relief from the pain and then appreciating that, focusing on it. You know, this might sound like kind of a sad story, but when my beloved little Maltese doggie was leaving this world at the end of her life, I knew she only had a couple of days, and I knew I was going to miss holding her. And I kept picking her up and holding her, thinking that, oh my goodness, when she goes, I'm going to be so sad, you know, that I didn't hold her one last time. But I thought it doesn't matter. I can hold her from now until that moment. I'm still going to feel sad that I can't hold her again. So no amount of picking her up is really going to change the sadness and grief that I'm going to feel when she passes. But one day during that time, I picked her up and I deliberately memorized what it felt like to snuggle her.
Nice.
I made the conscious effort to really focus on everything about what it felt like to hold her up next to me close and hug her and snuggle her. And I really laser focused on it because I wanted to just imprint it in my mind so I wouldn't forget it. And I still have it today, and it's been 3 years.
That's great.
Like really still, when I bring that memory to my imagination, it's just like I'm just holding her and snuggling her. And so even though that was an example that has some sadness to it, I believe that's part of the key of this is that recognizing, taking the moments to really deliberately focus on how good we're feeling when we're feeling good.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way,
even if it's just feeling better, like you said, you know, if there's chronic pain, it's that we talked yesterday about assigning the pain what's called an SUD, a subjective unit of discomfort. Mm-hmm. And that's when we say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being it's just the worst ever, and 1 you barely notice, you know, where is it? When we assign a number to the pain, then we know when we're experiencing, you know, when the headache feels like an 8 or feels like a 2. And during the times when it's ebbed to a 2, that's when we can recognize how much better it feels and kind of be appreciative. You know, Abraham always talks about appreciation being so powerful.
Oh, very much. Yeah. By the way, while you were talking about your experience with your late pet, my cat was sitting in my lap. And so it was a perfect opportunity for me to be reminded, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to appreciate the fact that she's sitting here. Now, she's since then heard something outside the window, so she leapt up to go find out what that was. But that's part of a joy of having a pet around. But the idea of focusing in on what's the level of pain, and is it a relatively low level of pain, so you can use it as an opportunity to shift your attention. It's a great idea. It also occurred to me, though, why don't we have an SUC?
A subjective unit of comfort?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, I know why. No, I do know why. Because the medical society probably chose that because they're wanting to know how bad the discomfort is.
I'm sure they do. But don't we want to know how much the comfort is?
Because that's generally what we focus on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it says a lot when you think about it.
So I'm going to say that right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, my SUC is about a 6.
So, and I just realized that we haven't, it's a little off topic, but everything's about the law of attraction. So we haven't mentioned today yet about how our new listeners can subscribe. So I want to be sure and talk about that for a second.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's one of the ways that we like to demonstrate how much we appreciate how wonderful our listeners are, and especially the new ones. So, something you should know about podcasts, if you aren't a regular podcast listener, is you can subscribe to them. You can actually have them show up on your Android or iPhone on a regular basis. As we put them out, they just show up there, and you can play them whenever you want to. So you can play them, on your way to work or on your way home from work, or, you're doing stuff around the house or whatever it is as you're going through your life. Instead of putting all that negative media on, you can put us on and have something positive going on in the background. And it's really easy to do. You just go to the homepage of our site, loatoday.net. The instructions are right there. They're really easy to follow. And then, of course, because we all believe in social media as a way of sharing with our friends and people close to us, take a moment after you subscribe and say, hey, I just subscribed to LOA Today. You ought to check it out. Because that's how we keep expanding our numbers, and that's how we find more and more people to enjoy their daily dose of happy with us.
And the other thing is we talked about when we first, hopped on this morning is that we've been developing a practice of our own of imagining and holding our audience in a space of success.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's a good place to be when we're holding our subscribers, our audience, our listeners in a place of creating everything they want to create in their life. And that's good that you're there.
So there's a benefit.
I want people holding me there, right? I would love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would love to hear, from someone, and I do, but it's wonderful to hear from someone that says, I've been thinking about you and I've been holding you in a space of success, of real success, or I've been thinking about you and I've just been imagining you being just deliriously happy about all the wonderful things going on in your life. That's a good feeling, right? So
absolutely. And so there's a benefit to being a listener, a regular subscriber who's listening, to the 30 to 45 shows a month that the average subscriber listens to. You basically can count on the co-hosts and some hundreds of listeners all holding you in your highest level of success, because we're a club. We're a great big team, and we just do it all together. And when you have that many people focusing on good things for everybody who's involved, boy, I don't know how you can possibly measure that, except to say that the curve is what they call geometric, which means it's a high-flying curve. It just swoops right upward.
A high-flying curve. I like that.
Yeah, high-flying curve. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that announcement.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for bringing it up.
So Abraham says our encouragement would be look for times or segments when you are not feeling such intensity of throbbing pain, and then focus upon the well-being. You have to find a way of separating, and this is really powerful. You have to find a way of separating what is happening in your experience from your emotional response to what is happening.
Critical. That's absolutely critical.
It reminds me of what we talked about earlier. I didn't see the connection, but it's here, about the difference between saying, I feel something and this is making me feel something.
Yes.
Right. I mean, pain is pain, and I may feel pain, but then I start telling all kinds of stories about the pain and having a real emotional experience with the pain. Those are two different things. So separating what's happening in your experience from your emotional response to what is happening. In other words, you could have pain in your body, and during the pain, you could be feeling fear, or you could have pain in your body while feeling hopeful. The pain does not have to dictate your attitude or the thoughts that you are thinking. It's possible to think about something other than the pain. And if you can achieve that, then in time, the pain will subside. However, if once the pain occurs, you give the pain your undivided attention, then you will only perpetuate more of what you do not want.
And what they're describing there, we have had numerous stories told by the various co-hosts that reinforce that exact point. It all depends on how you decide to think about it. Joel likes to talk a lot about how he loves working out in the gym. And he even told a story the other day where he said that there are basketball pros who are amazing athletes. They can just do incredible things that the average human being can't even begin to do. He says, but if I get them into a gym, I can outlift them every time. And what he's basically saying is, I have been doing so much weightlifting in my life. I have gotten so strong, and I've gone through so much pain because there's a lot of burn that you go through when you're doing all that lifting of iron. He's gotten to the point now where the pain almost doesn't matter to him anymore. He deals with it regularly, and he just brushes it off. It's like the story that I told yesterday about how he got the gallbladder out, right? And not even a day later, the same day, he walks out of the hospital against doctor's orders because the pain's just not going to get to him. He's decided that.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of weightlifters, there's a famous saying, right? No pain, no gain.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's a story they're telling about the pain.
Exactly.
And they're turning it into a benefit. They're like, well, this pain, they're giving it meaning. They're saying this pain I'm feeling means that my muscles I'm gaining muscle.
Yes.
So that's okay. And when it talked about you could feel pain and be feeling fear, I was like, well, yeah, that's probably the most common one, right? Is we start feeling pain and then we start telling ourselves a story about that pain. And it's not, this pain means I'm gaining muscle. It's, oh my gosh, this pain must mean that something's really wrong.
Right. Exactly.
And then we go, our imagination's real powerful in that sense, and that it can take off take off running with it.
Oh yeah.
And so that's interesting about that story that he's telling.
Yeah, because it means that we don't have to be enslaved to the pain. That's what it really comes down to. When people are suffering chronic pain and they can't take their focus off of it, they're really enslaved to the pain. They've given up their power, their right to focus on something different and to see it differently. Like you were talking about yesterday, pain can actually be an indicator of something's going on that we need to know about just so we can deal with it. Not to suffer and live in it, but to simply know about it. Okay, now we know about it. Great. We don't have to focus on it anymore. Now we can focus on getting better.
Right, exactly. And that's a perfect example of deliberate focus.
Exactly.
So someone who has been focusing negatively upon any variety of subjects and now is experiencing pain, now has to overcome the pain and focus positively. Mm-hmm. You see, your negative habit of thought brought about the illness, and to suddenly switch to the positive thought required to allow wellness is not likely to be a fast process, because now you have the hindering pain or illness or both to contend with. Preventive wellness is far easier to accomplish than corrective wellness. But in either case, improved feeling thoughts of greater and greater relief are the key.
I have never heard that term before.
Preventive wellness. Preventive wellness and corrective wellness are the two terms.
Preventive wellness. That is an interesting term. I mean, it's almost contradictory in the way it's phrased, but you see what it means. Because what they're really saying, it almost needs to be a different word, because preventive, we usually apply that with illness. It almost needs to be like, what's the positive version of preventive? I don't know what it is. But there's got to be.
Well, I think it's, I like the idea that a lot of us practice preventive wellness, I think. Anything that we're doing just because we're not trying to correct something, but we're just trying to create health in the body or an extra level of wellness or prevent something from happening, I think we're actually, by taking care of ourselves in whatever way we know best to do, we are often having the goal of preventing a welcoming environment for whatever we don't want. Right?
I think you just named the word for me. Welcoming wellness.
Yeah.
I like that one. Welcoming is good.
Instead of having to fix it. It's sort of like that maintenance is cheaper than repair.
Yes, right.
All right. So
I like that now. Welcoming wellness is easier to accomplish than corrective wellness. I like that.
even in situations where a lot of pain is being experienced, there are times of greater and lesser discomfort. Choose the best feeling times from the range you are experiencing to find positive aspects and to choose better feeling thoughts. And as you continue to reach for thoughts that bring greater emotional relief, that positive leaning will eventually bring you back to well-being every time, no exceptions. So because that's so strong, every time, no exceptions, I just want to read that again. Mm-hmm. Choose the best feeling times from the range you're experiencing to find positive aspects and to choose better feeling thoughts. And as you continue to reach for thoughts that bring greater emotional relief, that positive leaning will eventually bring you back to well-being every time, no exceptions.
Choosing the best feeling times. That's an important phrase. Choosing the best feeling times.
Well, you know, there's also, our bodies have a pH swing, meaning that our pH level in the body, whether our body is more alkaline or more acid, it fluctuates during different times of the day. And if you chart it, you can see that it changes. And so when we feel pain in the body, we usually have a more acid pH. And so it's interesting have you ever had the experience where you've been sick with, I don't know, a cold or a flu or something like that, and that something that lasts a few days or a week or something, and you'll notice, I feel better. Like I feel better when I wake up, but then I feel worse at nighttime or whatever. Yeah. Well, it's just because our body has a natural rhythm, and that pH changes, and so that's the first thing that came to mind when I read this about, pick the time when you're feeling better. For me, it would probably be right when I wake up in the morning, even when I'm not sick. I mean, just as a general rule, as I go throughout the day, it's not that I don't feel good, but I feel as it gets toward nighttime and bedtime, I feel tired. So I'd rather focus deliberately when I felt more energetic. Mm-hmm. But for some people, it may be the exact opposite. They may feel like, well, I feel relaxed at the end of the day, and that's a really good time. That works for me too.
Yeah, it does work. Sure. It also occurs to me, there's a phenomenon, I can't remember what it's called medically, but it basically describes the fact that when your body is sending all the defenses out to kill off an invading organism of some kind, virus, bacteria, whatever, and in the process of doing that, it's killing them off. So it's like a battlefield, right? And there's all these dead invading organisms all over the place. That the body
it's called die-off, what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what it's called, right? And during the process of the die-off, what's happened is you've got all these, they're essentially toxins. These toxins have built up in your body, and your body now has to cleanse them out. During the process of while it's cleansing it out, that's when you tend to feel sickest. So you tend to feel sickest at the moment that it's getting rid of all the stuff that's making you sick.
Right. So it's like you've got all these they're just dead bodies. That's what they are.
They are, yeah.
And so you actually, it's sort of like darkest before the dawn, right?
Right.
It's like,
exactly.
They call that a healing crisis. And so, yeah, it's sort of that idea of, well, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Not sure Abraham would agree with it, but as a person that lives in a human body, I've experienced it. So.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, here's another opportunity to take perspective. You can take the perspective that you feel worse, because that's the easy conclusion to draw. Or you can take the perspective of, thank goodness, it's finally cleansing out. Yeah, it doesn't feel so good right now, but I know it's cleansing out. I know it's clearing. That means I'm going to feel better real soon.
Right. Well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when I had a little cut on my foot, and it started itching, and it was just driving me crazy one afternoon. It was just itching so badly. And then I realized, because it was a real annoyance. Sure. I mean, it wasn't really pain, but it was like, then I realized, I remembered, our skin, when our skin is healing from a scrape or a cut or something, it often starts to itch when it's in that final healing stage. So my story in my mind just completely changed from, oh, this is really annoying to, oh, this means that my foot is healing.
Yay.
And that was an energy shift for me. I mean, it was a small example, but I think that idea of what story we're telling about the pain we're feeling.
I would say it's a big example. I mean, I understand what you mean by a small example. I think it's big because recognizing that what we previously perceived as being a negative is actually a positive, and being good with it, being okay with it, that's huge in my view, because that's not always easy to do. You just found a way to do something really important.
Well, it reminds me of what you said about Joel, and I thought about that no pain, no gain. When he feels pain, it's actually probably a good feeling to him, right?
Absolutely.
Remember we talked about yesterday about feeling pain and asking yourself, well, what if I was enjoying this sensation?
Which is a weird
And you said that sounds a little masochistic, but Joel is going and working out and feeling that pain, and that pain, he has given the pain meaning. It means I'm gaining muscle, and that's what I'm here to do. So this is actually a good thing. And I think we can do that. Now, I do want to say, number one, we are not doctors.
Very true.
Or lawyers.
Or lawyers.
and so number two, listen to your body. If your body is in pain, it's giving you some kind of message. It's asking you to take care of something. And so first and foremost, we need to recognize that. And that's true even in Joel's situation, right? Because he knows what it means.
Mm-hmm.
But the story that we're telling, if we can separate our experience, like we just read, from the emotional response, and I'm adding in, and the story that we're telling, the worry and fear that may come in,
right?
And just take the next step to address it, to recognize it, and see what's going on. As I think it's actually a good thing.
It is.
You were talking about yesterday people that don't have any kind of pain response.
Oh yeah. I mean, it sounds at first like it's a good thing until you find out that what really happens is they get illnesses and injuries and don't know that they have them.
Right. Nobody wants to go camping and fall asleep and roll into the fire and not know it.
Yeah, that would not be good.
Pain is it can be a good thing.
Yes,
it's important.
It can be a very good thing. And you mentioned that we're not doctors or lawyers, which is true. So at the risk of offending the medical community once again, I also want to talk about, just for a moment, the importance of the placebo effect. Because the placebo effect is an astonishingly good way to change one's perspective about pain to the point where the pain actually goes away.
Yep.
And that's the most amazing thing about it. I mean, literally, and lots of studies have shown this, that if somebody who is suffering pain receives something from somebody they trust, and that person who trusts says, yes, this is going to remove your pain, it removes the pain regardless of whether it's just a sugar pill or not.
Mm-hmm.
Their belief is what removes the pain. That's an incredibly important concept in my view.
Well, and it's our whole concept. I mean, it's everything we're talking about, right? Is how powerful our mind is.
True. How
powerful our thoughts are. And so it has to play into it. If our thoughts are that powerful and we think that this thing that we're doing has a certain meaning or is going to take away the pain, I can totally see that it would.
Now, the reason I said that the medical community might take exception is the medical community likes to dismiss the placebo effect as, not important. It's not something you really want to measure. It doesn't really contribute to our medical knowledge or anything like that. And I say, okay, fine, be that way if that's the way you want to be. I think it's actually very valuable. I think it's something that anyone can leverage, first of all. You don't have to be a doctor to leverage it. And second of all, I mean, if you're in constant pain and you've got a way to change that by believing, by finding a way to believe that a sugar pill is going to make your pain go away, wouldn't you want to do that? Especially if the medical community can't find a way to remove your pain.
I would be, if it worked and then I found out, so what?
Yeah.
hey, do you know that pill that you took was just a sugar pill? So does it matter? The pain is gone.
Give
Actually,
me a bottle
it's better.
of them. I'll take 2 gross. Yeah.
Well, and I think that the medical community is changing, and I think that the scientists and the doctors and the medical community is opening up to lots of ideas.
They are. Yes, there's a lot of improvement going on.
So I love this next subtitle. My natural state is one of well-being.
I wondered when we were going to get to this. We're talking about well-being. When do we actually talk about well-being?
Abraham says, at the core of that which you are is wellness and well-being. And if you are experiencing anything less than that, there is resistance present within your vibration. Resistance is caused by focusing upon the lack of what is wanted. Allowing is caused by focusing upon what is wanted. Resistance is caused by thought that does not match the perspective of your source. Allowing is experienced when your current thoughts do match the perspective of your source. And then this is in italics. That tells us important. Mm-hmm. Your natural state is one of wellness, one of absolute health, one of perfect bodily conditions. And if you are experiencing anything other than that, it's only because the balance of thought within you is toward the lack of what you want instead of what you do want. It is your resistance that causes an illness in the first place, and it is your resistance to illness that holds it to you once it's there.
Can we underline that one? That's an important one. It is your resistance to illness that holds it to you once it is there.
Mm. And that's,
and by the way, I think it's actually different from the way medicine uses the word resistance. We ought to make sure we're clear about that, because medical societies talk about resistance in terms of white blood cells and the defenses of the body and so forth. That's what they mean by
that's
resistance.
A really good point.
Yeah. Whereas we mean something entirely different. We mean an energetic resistance. We mean a thought process resistance.
Right, exactly. We want our immune system to resist things that will cause dis-ease, but that's not the resistance that we're talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
It's your attention to what you do not want that creates unwanted things in your experience, and so it's logical that your attention to what you do want would be appropriate. And the thing I think is interesting here about your resistance to illness that holds it to you once it's there, and what that means, resistance to illness is emotionally, mentally,
right,
vibrationally, us saying, I don't want this. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be sick. And we talked about that in January when I got sick.
Yes, right.
Or when my body was trying to get sick. And I felt the scratchy throat coming, and I felt the little headache, and I felt enough of something to be saying, oh no, I think I have a fever. But I think that could have been my imagination just running away with. And every time I caught myself doing this, what we're talking about, resisting, having a resistance to this illness, saying, no, no, no. I recognized I was focusing on what I did not want. And of course I was focusing on it. It was there and I didn't want it. It's kind of like, if a wasp flies into my office, it's kind of hard not to focus on it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. I don't want it there. It's bothering me. It's getting worse. It's buzzing loudly. So I kept pivoting back over and over and over in the course of a day. Every time my thoughts started going to that, resisting that illness, I would tell myself, no, wait. What is it I do want? And I would just start going through this list that I was building of what I wanted health-wise. I want my throat to feel great. I want my voice to be clear. I want my energy level to be up. I want my body to feel good. I just go through that list. And, hey, it was maybe 5 minutes later that my mind was saying, oh no, my back is aching. I think I have a fever. And I would, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had to be persistent about it.
Right.
And keep. Yeah. But I never got past that beginning stage of slight achiness, a little scratchy throat. I mean, it just never developed. Finally, there was at some point where I realized, oh my goodness, what? I was busy doing something. I realized a couple of days had gone by and I hadn't felt the scratchy throat. I hadn't felt the achiness. I hadn't felt it. And I felt great. And I hadn't had to keep up that relentless, focus because it had gone away.
It's funny, as you were talking about that and retelling that story, when you got to the part where you said scratchy throat, I started to feel a little tickle in my throat. And then as you got to the part where you talked about feeling wellness and feeling better, the tickle went away. And to me, that's an important thing because, clearly I'm not sick and I'm not on the verge of getting sick or anything like that. But I could see the process starting. And then I could see the process stopping. And in this case, I wasn't even changing my own thought process. I was just following yours.
Yeah.
So if I'm just following yours, imagine what happens if I follow my own thought process. If I follow my own thought process doing the same thing and catching myself in saying, oh, I've got a little bit of a cold coming on and so forth. Oh, wait a minute. Don't turn that around. I got wellness coming on. I'm feeling better. It's so much easier to change it early on. And
absolutely.
The indicator that I'm able to change it that quickly, that early, shows how much power I've got. I actually have a lot more power than I perhaps realized. And it was a power that is so big at the early stages that within seconds, I could instantly feel the scratchy throat and instantly feel it go away. It shows how much power we really have.
Right. And it's so much easier to leverage it when we're in the beginning of something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so that's why that's so important to build this practice. And I know I mention it all the time. It really was sort of a turning point in my own practice because I just stayed with it and stayed with it and stayed with it. And I finally got the result.
Yep.
And so it took some persistence.
It does, but it's worth it.
Abraham says, sometimes you think you're thinking about being well when you're really worried about being sick.
Yes.
And the only way to be sure of the vibrational difference is by paying attention to the emotion that always accompanies your thought. Feeling your way to the thoughts that promote wellness is much easier than trying to think yourself there.
Again, another very important point, and one that took me a while to learn, which is, where they say it here, paying attention to the emotion that always accompanies your thought. It starts with a recognition. It starts with being willing to even recognize that I had a thought and there's an emotion in there. I may not even know what that emotion is right now, but I know from experience there is an emotion in there. And if I really want to know, I can find out what that emotion is. I can find out what it feels like. So for those of us who have had problems with blocking our emotions or not feeling, I don't have emotions with my thoughts. Most of my thoughts have no emotional content at all. Well, my reaction to that is, actually, it does. We've just blocked it from ourselves in many ways. So I think it's nice to know there's always an emotion there, because if I really want to find it, all I have to do is just kind of stop and focus on it for a bit, and it'll become apparent to me what the emotion is. And sometimes it'll be an emotion I didn't even expect. Sometimes it'll be an emotion that I'll say, oh, wait a minute, that really is an emotion. I didn't think of that as an emotion before, but it really is.
Improving our emotional intelligence and expanding our emotional vocabulary is a really helpful thing. But I also want to say, if you're not there and you don't have that wide scope of, and if you can only think of the four main emotions that we hear about all the time, sad, mad, glad, and, afraid, happy, mad, sad, glad, then do that. But it's not even really important that you label the emotion all the time, because like we talked about, I think yesterday or last week, we said it either feels better or it doesn't.
That's it. That's the bottom line right there. Yeah. It feels good or it feels bad. Which is it? It's one or the other.
Right. It's comfortable or it's uncomfortable. It's painful or it's pleasurable. And when we're trying to shift from an emotion, when we're trying to shift from something that feels uncomfortable or painful, there's only one question. It either feels better or it doesn't.
That's right.
Because you were talking about neutral, and I thought that was a really interesting thing to think about. Where people say, Does this feel better or worse? Well, if it's not better, it's not better.
That's right.
So even if it's neutral, I guess we can be glad that it's not any worse, but we're aiming for better. So
if you feel neutral, you aren't quite there yet. You're close, just not quite there yet.
Make a commitment to yourself to feel good, and then guide your thoughts accordingly. And you will discover that without even realizing it, you've been harboring resentments, feeling unworthy, and feeling powerless. But now that you've decided to pay attention to your emotions, these resistant, illness-producing thoughts will no longer go unnoticed. It is not natural for you to be sick. And it's not natural for you to harbor negative emotion. For at your core, you are like your inner being. You are well, and you feel very, very good.
That was probably one of the best concepts for me in trying to understand what ways I was resisting stuff that I wanted to bring into my life. Because when I first heard that concept, I didn't understand how I was doing it. My favorite joke was to say, where's the off switch? I want to turn off the resistance. Where is it? I look at my chest. There's no switch here. Where is it? Not realizing that every time that I was not feeling good, feeling really good, that was an indication of resistance. Now that I understand that, now that if I'm not feeling good, I'm feeling resistance, it doesn't mean that I always have a clear picture now of where the resistance is or, what it feels like or whatever, but at least I know it's there. And now I know, okay, I've got some resistance to let go of. Now, how do I do that? And now I'm one step ahead of where I was before, because before I didn't even know I had it.
Yeah. And making the choice to let go of it's the very beginning.
Yeah, it is.
Recognizing it and then making the choice to let go of it. And I like the fact that they...
Isn't it amazing how when you make that choice to let go, that alone is often enough of a catalyst to let go of it in some way that you don't really expect?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to hang on to this. And, they listed here harboring resentments, feeling unworthy, feeling powerless.
Yep.
And those are all things that when we recognize them, we can let go of them. Mm. It's our choice. And just say, oh, I don't want that. Ooh, we've all done it. So it's just catching ourselves.
Yeah.
And recognizing that those are actually the thoughts and stories that are producing the discomfort and the dis-ease.
And I've also learned that just because I recognize it and say, I don't want that, and it doesn't go away instantly, doesn't mean it's not going away.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is such a good thing to recognize. Absolutely. Sometimes it takes persistence. I always think about manifestation. There are 3 phases to it. There's the seed planting phase that we make an intention or a choice. And then there's the manifestation that we want to see. It's kind of like a flower sprouting out of the ground and blooming. And we get so excited about that. But there's that middle ground of holding the vision. And that's when we plant those seeds, and every day we walk by that patch of dirt, and it's just a patch of dirt. Mm-hmm. And it's just dirt.
Yep.
And it's just still a patch of dirt today, and tomorrow it's still a patch of dirt, and we're like, nothing's happening. But you know what? Everything is happening. And then one day we walk out and we see in the patch of dirt that the flowers have sprouted up, and that's the manifestation. Most people give up in that middle portion when they don't think anything is happening. And that's the time to hold the vision. That's the time to recognize that everything is happening. We just don't always see it.
Well, we do eventually. We just have to be a little patient, but we do eventually. Yes. It does come into our awareness. Just sometimes you have to be a little patient and say, okay, give it a few minutes. It'll come.
It'll come.
It'll be there.
It'll be there.
So we've got just like less than a minute left. Once again, I want to thank our listeners, tell them how much we appreciate them being listeners. And the only sad part is I don't get to talk to Cindie for another 6 days, but I'm really looking forward to the next time we get to talk, Cindie.
I'll be back next Tuesday, but you'll be back tomorrow.
I will. In fact, I'll be back this afternoon with Wendy Dillard. So please be sure to tune in next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.